Medieval sword edges tested at the same hardness as modern kitchen knives. The smiths who built them used differential hardening, clay coating, and controlled quenching. These are not the tools of someone making a blunt weapon. The dull sword myth was never based on evidence, it was based on movies. But before we prove the myth wrong, it's worth understanding why it exists, because it almost makes sense. Before dismantling this, it's worth understanding why the dull sword myth exists at all. It has a certain intuitive appeal. Medieval swords were used against armor, against mail, plate, padded gambeson, against hard surfaces that would destroy a razor edge on contact. So the reasoning goes, why bother sharpening something that's going to hit steel all day? The edge would be gone after one fight anyway. Better to make it thick, tough, and blunt. A wedge that pushes through rather than slices. That logic sounds reasonable until you ask what medieval swords were actually hitting most of the time. Not plate armor, not mail coifs, unarmored opponents, horses, flesh, limbs. The targets that a sharp edge tears through and a blunt one bounces off. And then you ask what the fencing manuals actually teach. Liechtenauer, Fiore de Liberi, the German and Italian masters who documented longsword technique in exhaustive detail. Their manuals are full of slicing techniques, Abschneiden, Trancher, named cuts designed to slice across a target rather than chop through it. Techniques that physically cannot work without a keen edge. A blunt sword cannot execute a draw cut. The physics don't allow it. If the masters were teaching these techniques, the swords were sharp enough to execute them, almost. Then you look at the actual numbers, and the logic falls apart completely. Here is where the myth collapses completely. Metallurgical studies of surviving medieval longswords reveal a consistent pattern across multiple blades from multiple centuries. The edge is hard, the core is soft, and the hardness values at the edge are not just sharper than a club. They are comparable to modern tool steel. One late medieval sword, studied through metallographic analysis, showed cutting-edge hardness between 500 and 640 Vickers. To put that in terms that matter, 500 to 640 Vickers is roughly 52 to 60 on the Rockwell C scale. Modern kitchen knives run between 56 and 62 HRC. That medieval sword's edge was sitting in the same hardness range as contemporary professional cutlery, not close to it, in the same range. A 15th century Polish sword from Raciborz tested at edge hardness up to 504 Vickers with a core of around 145 Vickers. The core is essentially soft iron, tough, flexible, resistant to catastrophic fracture. The edge is hard martensite, the same crystalline steel structure a modern bladesmith deliberately creates through controlled quenching. Renaissance blades from Brescia in Italy showed edge hardness between 480 and 580 Vickers across multiple specimens. This pattern is not accidental. It is the direct result of deliberate heat treatment. Medieval smiths quenched the heated edges of their blades, often coating the spine with clay first to keep the back soft while the edge hardened rapidly. Theophilus, writing in the 12th century, describes this exact process. The technique produces what metallurgists call differential hardening, a hard cutting zone, and a tough structural core in the same blade. Japanese swordsmiths are famous for this. European smiths were doing it centuries earlier, and the surviving blades prove it. Those hardness numbers didn't happen by accident. Medieval smiths built that edge in deliberately, and the methods they used are more sophisticated than most people expect. The construction methods medieval smiths used were not primitive. They were solutions to engineering problems that required real understanding of material behavior, even without the chemistry to explain why it worked. Pattern welding, the technique that produces the layered appearance sometimes called Damascus, was common in early medieval blades. Smiths twisted and folded different grades of iron and steel together, then welded them into a single billet. The result distributed hard and soft material through the blade in controlled patterns. By the 14th and 15th centuries, single billet high-carbon steel had become more common as steel production improved, but the principle remained. The edge needed to be hard, and the spine needed to be tough. Some blades used a technique called steeling, welding a strip of high-carbon steel directly onto a lower carbon iron core. The steel provided the hard cutting edge. The iron core absorbed impact and prevented the blade from shattering under lateral stress. It is the same principle as a modern laminated kitchen knife, where a hard steel core is sandwiched between softer steel cladding. Medieval smiths arrived at this solution through centuries of empirical experimentation. The Brescia swords, studied by modern metallurgists, showed blades of single steel or steel laminated onto iron, carburized and quenched so that only the surface hardened. Carburization is the process of heating iron in contact with charcoal, allowing carbon atoms to diffuse into the surface and raise its hardness. Medieval smiths did not understand carbon diffusion at a chemical level. They knew that iron heated in a charcoal forge for long enough became harder, held better edges, and survived more use. They exploited that observation systematically. Building a hard edge at the forge was only half the problem. Keeping it sharp was the other half, and medieval warriors took that just as seriously. A sword sharpened to tool steel hardness at the forge did not stay that way indefinitely. Medieval warriors knew this. The question is not whether swords dulled in use. They did. The question is what happened next. Armies brought armorers. Crusader chronicles describe the sound of steel on stone through camp nights as soldiers sharpened their blades before battle. The equipment for maintaining edges was understood, available, and actively used. Coarse sandstone for removing damage, finer oil stones for refining the edge, leather strops for final honing. The same progression any serious cutler uses today. Drawing a sword from a leather scabbard generates friction against the edge. Repeated draws dull a blade gradually without any combat. Warriors wiped blades clean after use and oiled them against corrosion. Scabbards lined with wool or treated leather held oil against the blade. This was not optional maintenance. A corroded edge is a destroyed edge, and medieval owners understood that. The argument that swords were left dull because resharpening was too difficult collapses when you look at who was responsible for those weapons. Knights and men-at-arms whose lives depended on their swords' performance. Armies with dedicated armorer support. Men who treated their weapons as the most critical piece of equipment they own. The idea that these people walked into battle with intentionally blunt blades is not supported by a single piece of contemporary evidence. But here's what the myth never actually tests. What does a dull sword do in practice? Because the answer kills the argument completely. Here is the consequence that the myth ignores entirely. Modern cutting tests with period-accurate steel reproductions are unambiguous on this point. A blunted edge, even slightly blunted, dramatically reduces cut performance. Not by a small margin, dramatically. A draw cut that severs cleanly with a sharp edge fails to penetrate with a dulled one. The physics of slicing require the edge to initiate a cut by concentrating stress at a microscopic point of contact. Widen that point through dulling, and the stress distributes across a larger area. The cut doesn't initiate. The blade pushes rather than slices. The fencing manuals care deeply about this. Techniques like the Abschneiden, the slicing cut taught by Lichtenauer, work by pulling the edge across a target after initial contact. This multiplies the cutting effect beyond what a single chop could achieve. It is efficient. It is fast. It works with less physical force than a pure chop because the geometry does additional work. But it only works if the edge is keen enough to bite and track through the target. A dull edge skips across the surface. The technique becomes useless. If medieval masters were teaching these techniques in systematic treatises designed for practical combat training, the swords those techniques were being practiced with were sharp enough to execute them. You do not write a training manual for a tool that cannot perform the techniques you are describing. There is one version of the dull sword argument that's harder to dismiss. It's the armored combat case, and it deserves a direct answer. The strongest version of the dull sword myth rests on armored combat. Against plate armor, sharpness is largely irrelevant. You are not cutting through steel plate. You are thrusting into gaps, grappling, using the sword as a lever or a bludgeon through half-sorting techniques where the blade is gripped directly. This is accurate. In full plate combat, edge geometry matters less than point geometry and structural rigidity. In any army across any period of medieval warfare were not in full plate. They were in mail, padded armor, partial plate, or no armor at all. The sword's primary cutting targets were not the heavily armored elite. They were everyone else. And even armored knights did not fight exclusively against other armored knights. Battlefield situations created encounters with unarmored opponents constantly. A knight who dulled his sword for armored combat was carrying a blunt tool into every other engagement that day. The evidence from battlefield archaeology confirms what the metallurgy predicts. Skeletal remains from medieval battle sites show clean cuts through bone consistent with sharp steel edges. Skull transections, severed limbs, wounds that required a keen edge to produce, not blunt force injuries, not crushing trauma from a wedge-shaped bludgeon, precise cuts from a weapon maintained for cutting. Medieval longswords were not blunt. The metallurgy proves it. The fencing manuals prove it. The battlefield wounds prove it. The maintenance culture proves it. The myth persists because blunt, heavy swords fit a narrative about medieval warfare as crude and unsophisticated. That narrative is wrong about the swords and wrong about the people who carried them. These were precision instruments built by craftsmen who understood their material well enough to produce hardness profiles that modern metallurgists recognize as deliberate and skillful. The men who carried them sharpened them before battle, maintained them between engagements, and trained with techniques that required keen edges to function. They knew exactly what their weapons were capable of. The only people who thought medieval swords were dull are the people who never studied them.